Here's something that will completely change how you think about money. 90% of wealthy families, families with real documented wealth, completely lose it by the third generation. Gone. Not a little bit. All of it. And the crazy part? They didn't lose it because of bad luck, or stock market crashes, or even bad spending habits. They lost it because nobody ever taught them the one thing that matters most when it comes to keeping wealth alive. And that's exactly what this video is about. Because today, I'm not just going to tell you how to build generational wealth. I'm going to tell you the things nobody talks about, the real reasons wealth dies, the hidden structures the wealthy use to protect it, and the exact blueprint you need to start right now, regardless of how much money you currently have. Let's be honest about something. The conversation around generational wealth in this country, and really around the world, is completely broken. On one side, you have people who dismiss it as something only for the ultra-rich, the already privileged, the people born into money. That's not for people like us, they say. On the other side, you have a flood of social media influencers making it sound like all you need to do is open a brokerage account, buy a few index funds, and boom, your grandkids will be set for life. Both of these pictures are wrong, and both of these narratives are dangerous. Here's what's actually true. Generational wealth is accessible to anyone willing to understand how it actually works, but it requires you to completely rewire how you think about money, time, family, and legacy. Today, we are going to go deep. I'm talking about the mindset, the mechanics, the legal structures, the investment vehicles, the family dynamics, the mistakes, everything. By the time this video ends, you will have a clearer, more complete picture of generational wealth than 95% of the people around you. And more importantly, you'll have a real plan to start building it today. Before we dive in, a quick note. Nothing in this video is financial, legal, or tax advice. Everything I'm sharing is for educational purposes. Always consult with qualified professionals for your specific situation. Now, let's get into it. What generational wealth actually means. The real definition. Most people define generational wealth as simply money passed down from generation to generation. And while that's technically accurate, it misses the most important part of the equation. Real generational wealth isn't just about transferring money. It's about transferring the knowledge, values, habits, and systems that produce money. Think about it this way. If you gave a 22-year-old who had never driven a car the keys to a Formula One race car, what would happen? They'd probably crash within the first 100 meters. Not because they're not smart, not because they're not capable, but because they've never been taught how to handle something that powerful. That is exactly what happens when families transfer wealth without transferring financial education. The money becomes the car, and the next generation, unprepared, untrained, and overwhelmed, crashes it. Real generational wealth has 5 distinct components. Most people only think about the first one. 1. Financial capital. This is the actual money. Cash, investments, real estate, business equity. The assets you can see, touch, and measure on a balance sheet. 2. Human capital. This is the skills, education, work ethic, and earning potential that each family member carries with them. A doctor from a wealthy family doesn't just inherit money. They inherit access to the best schools, mentors, networks, and opportunities that allow them to earn significantly more than their peers. 3. Social capital, the relationships, networks, and social connections that open doors. Ever wonder why some people always seem to know someone? Why certain families always have access to the right investors, the right attorneys, the right politicians? That's social capital, and it's worth more than most people realize. 4. Intellectual capital. The family's collective knowledge about money, business, investing, and wealth management. This is the secret playbook that wealthy families pass down, the understanding of how wealth works, not just the wealth itself. 5. Legacy capital. The values, stories, identity, and purpose that hold a family together across generations. This is the why behind the wealth. Families with strong legacy capital stay unified. Families without it fracture, and fractured families destroy wealth faster than any economic crisis ever could. When you hear a wealthy person say, "We didn't just leave our children money, we left them a foundation," this is what they mean. They're talking about all 5 forms of capital, not just the financial one. Why this distinction matters. Here's a staggering statistic that should stop you cold. According to research from the Williams Group, a wealth consulting firm that has studied over 3,000 wealthy families, 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation, and 90%, 9 out of 10, lose it by the third. But here's the part that same research makes clear. The number one reason families lose their wealth is not poor investment decisions. It's not the stock market. It's not inflation or taxes. The number one reason, cited in 60% of cases, is a breakdown in trust and communication within the family. The second biggest reason, in 25% of cases, is that the next generation wasn't prepared. They didn't have the education or the readiness to handle the responsibility. That means 85% of generational wealth failures come down to human problems, not financial problems, human problems. And that is the truth that nobody explains. You cannot build a financial legacy on a broken family foundation. The money and the people have to grow together. That's where we start. The shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves phenomenon. A global problem with a global name. There's a saying in English that goes, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. You start with nothing, build wealth, and 3 generations later, you're back to nothing. What's fascinating and deeply revealing is that every culture in the world has a version of this saying. In China, they say, wealth never survives 3 generations. In Japan, rice paddies to rice paddies in 3 generations. In Scotland, the father buys, the son builds, the grandchild sells, and his son begs. In Brazil, pai rico, filho nobre, neto pobre, rich father, noble son, poor grandson. Every civilization, across thousands of years of history, has observed the same pattern. This is not an accident. This is a deeply human phenomenon, and understanding why it happens is the key to breaking the cycle. Generation 1, the builder. Generation 1 is typically the person who builds the wealth from scratch, or at least significantly grows what was passed to them. They are motivated by necessity and survival. They know what it's like to have nothing. They are disciplined, frugal, hard-working, and laser-focused on building security. They live the lessons of wealth building, the 5 a.m. wake-ups, the sacrifices, the risks, the failures and comebacks. They don't need a book to teach them financial discipline. They earned it through lived experience. Generation 2. The consolidator, Generation 2, grows up watching their parents work hard, sacrifice, and build. They appreciate it. They often help. They see the struggle, even if they don't fully live it themselves. They're motivated, but with a slightly softer edge. They take what their parents built and try to maintain or grow it. But here's where the cracks begin. Generation 2 usually didn't live in poverty. They don't have the visceral gut-level fear of financial ruin that their parents had. Their discipline is more intellectual than emotional. They manage the wealth, but they didn't build it from nothing, and that makes a difference in how they handle it. Generation 3. The inheritor. Generation 3 is the dangerous one, and I say dangerous with compassion because it's not their fault, it's a structural problem. They grow up with everything. They have no memory of struggle. They've been surrounded by abundance their entire lives, so abundance feels normal, not like a privilege, like an entitlement. The discipline that made Grandma and Grandpa wealthy seems unnecessary to them. Why do I need to be so careful? We have plenty. The frugality seems excessive. The long-term thinking feels abstract. And then, often quietly, sometimes dramatically, the wealth disappears. The 3 mechanisms of wealth destruction. There are 3 specific mechanisms by which most family wealth gets destroyed. Understanding these is half the battle. Mechanism 1. Lifestyle creep without income growth, as wealth grows across generations, so does spending. Each generation tends to live more lavishly than the last, which is understandable. They're surrounded by more. The problem comes when the spending grows faster than the investments. You can have $10 million in assets, but if you're spending $1 million a year, you will run out within 2 decades, especially when you factor in taxes, inflation, and splitting assets across multiple heirs. Mechanism 2. Division without strategy. When wealthy parents die and leave their estate to multiple children, the wealth gets divided. Then those children leave it to their children, divided again, and again, and again. What was once $5 million becomes 20 different inheritances of $250,000 each within 2 generations. Without a unifying strategy, a family office, a trust structure, a clear investment mandate, division destroys the scale that made the wealth powerful in the first place. Mechanism 3. Absence of financial education. And here's the most brutal one. Children who inherit significant wealth without the financial literacy to manage it are almost guaranteed to make catastrophic mistakes. Not because they're irresponsible, but because they were never taught. Nobody sat them down and explained compound interest, tax liability, asset allocation, or the difference between an asset and a liability. And in the absence of that education, human nature takes over. Spending feels good, saving feels boring, and the money disappears. Breaking this cycle requires intentional, deliberate action across multiple fronts simultaneously, and that is what the next section of this video is entirely about. Pillar 1. Financial education, the non-negotiable foundation. The wealth you can't see, but can't live without. If you could only pass one thing down to your children, not money, not real estate, not a business, but one thing that would guarantee they build and maintain wealth on their own, what would it be? Financial education. Every time. Because here's the truth. A financially literate person with no money will eventually accumulate wealth. But a financially illiterate person with lots of money will almost certainly lose it. Financial education is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Without it, all the other pillars crumble. What financial education actually includes. Financial education is not just knowing how to balance a checkbook or avoid credit card debt. That's financial basics. Important, yes, but just the starting point. Real financial education covers 1. Understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. Robert Kiyosaki famously put it simply: an asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. Your car is a liability. It depreciates and costs you money. A rental property is an asset. It generates income. Most people spend their lives accumulating liabilities and wondering why they never feel wealthy. 2. Understanding how compound interest works and using it intentionally. Einstein allegedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he actually said it or not, the math backs it up. If you invest $10,000 at age 25 at an average annual return of 10%, by the time you're 65, you'll have over $450,000 without adding another dollar. That same $10,000 invested at 45 grows to just over $67,000 by age 65. The only difference? Time. Financial education teaches you to start early and never stop. 3. Understanding taxation. This is where the wealthy fundamentally differ from the middle class. The wealthy don't just earn money. They understand how their money is taxed, and they structure everything to minimize that tax burden legally. Capital gains versus ordinary income, depreciation, tax loss harvesting, qualified opportunity zones, Roth conversions. These are not exotic concepts. They are tools available to anyone who takes the time to understand them. And we'll cover these in depth in Pillar 5. 4. Understanding cash flow versus net worth. Many people look wealthy on paper. They own expensive homes, drive luxury cars, wear designer clothes, but they have zero cash flow. Their net worth is tied up in illiquid assets, and their monthly income barely covers their expenses. Real wealth isn't about how much you own. It's about how much of what you own is working for you every single month. 5. Understanding risk, diversification, and long-term investing. Fear and greed are the two biggest destroyers of investment returns. Financial education teaches you to ignore short-term market noise, stick to a long-term plan, and diversify intelligently across asset classes so that no single bad event can wipe out your entire wealth. How to pass financial education. Down now. Here's where it gets practical. You can't just hand your kid a copy of The Wealthy Barber and call it done. Financial education has to be woven into the fabric of your family life. Start early. Children as young as 5 and 6 can understand the concept of saving versus spending. Give them 3 jars. 1 for spending, 1 for saving, 1 for giving. Make the lesson physical and tangible. Let them feel the satisfaction of watching their savings jar grow. Include them in real financial conversations. Not the anxiety-inducing ones, but the intentional ones. We're saving up for a family vacation this year. Here's how much we need, and here's our plan. We just made this investment. Here's why and how it works. Let them see that money is not a mystery or a source of shame. It's a tool, and tools have to be learned. Teach through experience, not just theory. Give teenagers a small investment account and let them make real, small-stakes decisions. Let them experience the nervousness of seeing a stock drop, the excitement of watching it recover. Experience is a better teacher than any book. Model the behaviors you want to pass down. Children watch everything. If they see you spending impulsively, living paycheck to paycheck, and never talking about money, that will be their financial default. If they see you investing intentionally, discussing financial goals openly, and making thoughtful decisions, that becomes their normal too. Family meetings about finances, quarterly or even annually, where the family discusses investments, goals, and financial progress, are one of the most powerful tools wealthy families use to ensure continuity. You don't need a family office or a trust fund to have a family financial meeting. You just need the discipline to do it. Pillar 2. Real estate, the oldest wealth builder in human history. Why the wealthy love real estate? There's a reason that throughout all of human history, from ancient Rome to modern-day Manhattan, land and real estate have been at the center of generational wealth. And it's not just because property values go up over time, though they do. It's because real estate is the only asset class that simultaneously does 5 wealth-building things at once. Let me break those 5 down. 1. Cash flow. When you own a rental property that generates more income than its expenses, you have positive cash flow. Every month, that property puts money in your pocket, whether you work that day or not. This is passive income at its most basic and most powerful form. A well-structured rental portfolio can eventually replace your entire salary, giving you time, which is the most precious non-renewable resource you have. 2. Appreciation. Over the long term, despite short-term fluctuations, real estate appreciates in value. The median U.S. home price in 1970 was approximately $23,000. Today, it's over $400,000. That's not magic. That's time, population growth, and the finite supply of land. Buy and hold is one of the most powerful strategies in real estate, and one of the most underused because humans are impatient. 3. Mortgage paydown, equity building. When you own a rental property, your tenants are effectively paying down your mortgage. Every month, a portion of that payment reduces your debt and increases your equity, your actual ownership stake in the property. Over 30 years, a property that started with $50,000 of equity can have $300,000 plus of paid-off equity, without you contributing a single additional dollar beyond the down payment. 4. Tax benefits. This is where real estate becomes extraordinary. The IRS gives real estate investors a menu of tax advantages that are simply not available to W-2 employees. Depreciation allows you to deduct a portion of your property's value as an expense every year, even if the property is actually appreciating in value. The 1031 exchange allows you to sell one investment property and roll all the proceeds into a bigger one, deferring capital gains taxes indefinitely. Mortgage interest is deductible. Property taxes are deductible. Repairs are deductible. For a rental property investor, the tax code is an enormous advantage. 5. Leverage in the stock market. If you have $50,000 to invest, you buy $50,000 worth of stocks. In real estate, if you have $50,000, you can use that as a down payment and control a $250,000 property with someone else's money, the bank's. Your return is calculated on the entire $250,000, not just your $50,000. That's a 5-to-1 leverage ratio. Used wisely, leverage is one of the most powerful wealth-building tools ever invented. Used recklessly, as we saw in 2008, it can be catastrophic. Financial education, Pillar 1, is what makes the difference. The real estate legacy strategy. Here's how serious generational wealth builders think about real estate, not just as income-generating assets, but as family infrastructure. Instead of selling properties when they become too valuable, they hold them. They place them in LLCs and family trusts. They transfer them to heirs with significant tax advantages through stepped-up basis rules. They build a portfolio that, over decades, becomes a self-sustaining engine of cash flow, equity, and opportunity. A family that buys 2 rental properties in their 30s, uses the income to buy 2 more in their 40s, and continues compounding, will have a portfolio worth several $1,000,000 by the time their children are adults. And if those children understand Pillar 1, financial education, they will know exactly how to manage, maintain, and grow that portfolio for the next generation. Getting started in real estate. You don't need to be a millionaire to start in real estate. House hacking, buying a duplex, triplex, or small multifamily property, living in one unit and renting out the others, is one of the most accessible and powerful entry points. Your tenants help pay your mortgage, you build equity, you gain landlord experience, and you do it all with a relatively small down payment, thanks to FHA loans that allow as little as 3.5% down for owner-occupied properties. You can also start with REITs, real estate investment trusts, which allow you to invest in real estate portfolios through the stock market with as little as a few $100s. REITs won't give you the same tax advantages as direct ownership, but they will give you exposure to real estate's appreciation and income generation potential while you build capital for direct investment. Pillar 3, business ownership and equity, where real wealth is created. Why business is the fastest path to wealth. Let me be very direct about something. If you study the Forbes 400, the 400 wealthiest people in America, the vast majority of them did not get there through a salary or even through real estate alone. They got there through equity ownership in businesses. Jeff Bezos didn't get rich because Amazon paid him a good salary. He got rich because he owned a meaningful stake in a company that grew into one of the most valuable entities in human history. That's equity. That's ownership. Now, you are probably not going to build the next Amazon, but that's not the point. The point is that the principles of business ownership, building equity, creating scalable income, generating cash flow that doesn't require your constant presence, these are available to anyone who decides to build and own something. The employee versus owner equation. Here's the most important financial concept most schools never teach. When you work for someone else as an employee, there is a ceiling on your income. Your time is finite. There are only 24 hours in a day. And you are paid for your time, not for the value you create. Your employer captures the excess value you create above your salary. That's the business model. When you own a business, you capture that excess value yourself. You build systems, processes, and teams that generate revenue beyond what your own personal time can produce. And over time, if you build it right, you create an entity that has value independent of you, something that can be sold, passed down, or continue generating income, even if you're not showing up every day. That is leverage, that is scale, and that is the secret to how business owners build wealth at a pace that employees rarely can. The spectrum of business ownership. Business ownership doesn't have to mean starting a tech company or opening a franchise. There is a wide spectrum of business models that can generate significant wealth, and the right one for you depends on your skills, interests, capital, and risk tolerance. Service. Businesses, landscaping, cleaning, HVAC, plumbing, accounting firms. High demand, low startup cost, often recession resistant, and highly transferable to the next generation. E-commerce and digital businesses can be started with very little capital, can scale globally, and many can be automated or outsourced over time. Franchises, a proven system and brand that you pay to use. Higher upfront cost, but significantly lower failure rate than independent startups. Buying existing businesses, an often overlooked strategy. Instead of building something from scratch, you buy a cash-flowing business, a laundromat, a car wash, a medical practice, a printing company, at a multiple of its annual earnings. No startup phase, immediate income, existing customers. Building a business for legacy, not just income. The key distinction between building a business for wealth versus building a business for income is whether the business can eventually run without you. A business that depends entirely on the owner's daily presence is not an asset. It's a very demanding job. A business with systems, documented processes, trained management, and a culture that doesn't require the founder to function. That is an asset that can be transferred. When thinking about generational wealth, the goal is to build businesses that your children or grandchildren can step into or sell on favorable terms. A family business that has been built with systems and with succession in mind is one of the most powerful wealth transfer vehicles available. And when combined with the proper legal structures, which we'll cover in Pillar 6, a family business can be transferred with significant tax advantages, creating wealth that compounds across multiple generations. Pillar 4, stock market and index investing. Building wealth in the background. The market is the greatest wealth-building tool most people use wrong. The stock market is remarkable. Over any 20-year period in the history of the S&P 500, the market has never lost money. Never. Not through the Great Depression, not through Black Monday, not through the dot-com crash, not through 2008, not through COVID. Over any 20-year window, the market has always been positive. And yet, the average retail investor significantly underperforms the market. Studies from Dalbar consistently show that while the S&P 500 has averaged roughly 10% annual returns over the long term, the average investor earns significantly less, typically 3 to 5%, because they do the worst possible thing. They panic sell when the market drops and buy back in when it's already recovered. Understanding this difference between what the market offers and what most investors actually capture is one of the most important pieces of financial knowledge you can have. The case for index funds. The simplest, most evidence-backed strategy for long-term wealth building in the stock market is also the most boring. Buy and hold low-cost broad market index funds. An index fund doesn't try to beat the market. It simply tracks the market. Holding small pieces of every company in an index like the S&P 500. Because it's not actively managed, its fees are incredibly low, often less than 0.1% per year, compared to 1 to 2% or more for actively managed funds. And study after study has shown that over the long term, these passively managed index funds outperform the vast majority of active fund managers. This is not a fringe view. It's the consensus of most serious financial economists, and was championed by the late Jack Bogle, founder of Vanguard. The numbers that should change your life. If you're not already in shock from the power of compound interest, let me make this very concrete. If you invest $500 per month starting at age 25 and you earn an average annual return of 10%, the historical S&P 500 average, by the time you're 65, you will have invested $240,000 of your own money, and your portfolio will be worth approximately $3.2 million. If you wait until 35 to start, just 10 years later, you will have invested $180,000 of your own money, and your portfolio at 65 will be worth approximately $1.1 million. You invested $60,000 less and ended up with $2.1 million less. That difference, $2.1 million, is the cost of a 10-year delay. Time is the most powerful force in investing. Starting is more important than the amount. Starting is more important than picking the right fund. Starting today beats waiting for the perfect moment every single time. Investing for generational wealth. When building for generational wealth specifically, your investment strategy should shift from a save for retirement mentality to a build permanent capital mentality. This means investing in tax-advantaged accounts, Roth IRAs, which grow tax-free and have no required minimum distributions, 401ks, HSAs, health savings accounts, which are triple tax-advantaged. Custodial investment accounts for your children. Starting a Roth IRA or a UGMA account for a child early means decades of compound growth before they even reach adulthood. Never touching the principal. The wealthy understand that the income from investments can fund lifestyle, but the principal, the base capital, should never be spent. It should be maintained, grown, and eventually transferred. Dollar cost averaging through market ups and downs. Automating your monthly investment contributions removes emotion from the equation and ensures you're buying more shares when the market is down and prices are cheap. All right, I want to make sure you're still with me, because what's coming next is the section most financial educators completely skip. We've talked about building wealth. Now let's talk about keeping it. And this is where the wealthy are playing a completely different game than everyone else. Don't go anywhere. Pillar 5, Tax Strategy, the silent wealth killer, and how the wealthy stop it. The tax gap. Nobody talks about. Here's a number that should make you uncomfortable. The average American worker pays approximately 25 to 35% of their income in federal and state taxes. That's before you factor in sales taxes, property taxes, and all the other ways governments extract wealth. The average billionaire, according to multiple analyses of public records and tax data, pays an effective tax rate of approximately 8 to 15%. Sometimes lower. Now, before you get outraged, this is not about corruption or criminality in most cases. It's about financial education. Wealthy individuals and families hire expert tax attorneys, CPAs, and financial advisors whose sole job is to legally minimize their tax liability. They use tools and strategies that are available to anyone, but that most people have never heard of. Let's walk through the most important ones. Tax strategy. Number 1, capital gains versus ordinary income. The single biggest tax advantage available to investors is the preferential tax rate on long-term capital gains. When you sell an investment that you've held for more than 1 year, the profit, capital gain, is taxed at 0%, 15%, or 20%, depending on your income level. Compare that to ordinary income, which is taxed at up to 37% at the federal level. The simple act of holding investments for more than 1 year instead of trading them short-term can cut your tax rate on that income by more than half. This is why wealthy investors rarely sell, and why buy and hold is not just a growth strategy, but a tax strategy. Tax strategy number 2, depreciation, the real estate tax secret. When you own rental property, the IRS allows you to depreciate the property, meaning you can deduct a portion of its value as an expense each year, even though the property is not actually losing value in real life. Residential properties are depreciated over 27.5 years. Commercial properties over 39 years. Here's why this is extraordinary. You can literally own a property that is cash flow positive, putting money in your pocket every month, while also reporting a tax loss on paper because of depreciation. That paper loss can offset other income, reducing your overall tax bill. This is one of the primary reasons wealthy real estate investors pay lower effective tax rates than their accountants. Tax strategy number 3, the 1031 exchange, defer taxes forever. Under Section 1031 of the U.S. Tax Code, when you sell an investment property, you can defer all capital gains taxes indefinitely by rolling the proceeds into a like-kind property within specific time limits. Done correctly and repeatedly, you can grow your real estate portfolio indefinitely without ever paying capital gains tax on any individual sale. When you eventually die and transfer the properties to your heirs, they receive them at a stepped-up basis, meaning the capital gains accumulated during your lifetime are completely wiped out. This is one of the most powerful wealth transfer mechanisms that exists, and it's fully legal, explicitly allowed by the tax code. Tax strategy number 4, the Roth IRA, tax-free legacy. A Roth IRA is funded with after-tax money, but everything that grows inside it, dividends, capital gains, compounding returns, is tax-free forever. And crucially for generational wealth, you can pass a Roth IRA to your heirs who can continue to benefit from tax-free growth for years after your death. For long-term generational wealth building, the Roth IRA is one of the single most powerful vehicles available to ordinary Americans. Tax strategy number 5, charitable structures. Donor-advised funds, DAFs, charitable remainder trusts, CRTs, and family foundations allow wealthy families to make charitable contributions, receive significant tax deductions, and retain meaningful influence over how those charitable assets are invested and distributed. These structures are not just for the ultra-wealthy. They are accessible to anyone with the right planning, and they allow families to reduce estate taxes, reduce income taxes, and build a legacy of giving alongside a legacy of wealth. The bottom line on taxes, the wealthy don't earn less than you. In many cases, they earn far more, but they pay a lower effective tax rate because they understand the rules of the tax code and they play by them intelligently. You can too, with the right education and the right professional advisors. Pillar 6. Legal structures, trusts, LLCs, and estate planning. The infrastructure of wealth. Here's something the wealthy understand that most people don't. Wealth without legal structure is wealth at risk. Lawsuits, divorces, creditors, estate taxes, probate court. These are not hypothetical threats. They are real, documented mechanisms by which wealth gets stripped away from families every single year. Legal structures are the armor that protects your wealth, and they are available to anyone, but they require intentionality and professional guidance to set up correctly. Tool number 1, the LLC, Limited Liability Company. If you own rental properties, a side business, or any income-generating asset, operating under an LLC is one of the most basic and important steps you can take. An LLC separates your personal assets from your business assets. If someone sues your rental property, LLC, and wins, they can potentially take the property, but they cannot touch your personal bank accounts, your home, your car, or your other investments. That separation, that corporate veil, is protection. Many real estate investors own each property in a separate LLC and then own all those LLCs through a holding company, creating layer upon layer of liability protection. This structure is standard practice for serious real estate investors and business owners. Tool number 2, the revocable living trust. Most people think about trusts as something only the ultra-rich use. Wrong. A revocable living trust is a foundational estate planning tool that anyone with meaningful assets should have. Here's why it matters. When you die without a trust, your assets go through probate, a public legal process by which a court distributes your estate. Probate is slow, often taking 1 to 3 years. Expensive, court fees and attorney fees can consume 3 to 7% of the estate's value. And public, anyone can look up what you owned and who you left it to. A living trust bypasses probate entirely. Your assets transfer immediately to your designated beneficiaries, privately, without court involvement. For generational wealth purposes, a trust also gives you control from beyond the grave. You can specify, my child receives this money at age 30, not age 18. My grandchild receives a distribution for education, but only for education. The investment portfolio must remain intact for 20 years. You can embed your values, your wisdom, and your intentions into the legal document that governs your wealth after you're gone. Tool number 3, the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust, ILIT. Life insurance proceeds are generally income tax-free when paid to beneficiaries, but if you own the policy when you die, the death benefit may be included in your taxable estate, potentially subject to estate taxes of up to 40%. An irrevocable life insurance trust, ILIT, is set up to own the policy instead of you, removing it from your taxable estate while still allowing the death benefit to pass tax efficiently to your heirs. For families with significant wealth, this strategy can save millions in estate taxes. Tool number 4, the Dynasty Trust. A dynasty trust is exactly what it sounds like, a trust designed to hold and grow wealth across multiple generations, sometimes for 100 years or more. Unlike standard trusts that must eventually be distributed, a dynasty trust can hold assets indefinitely, protecting them from estate taxes, divorces, creditors, and beneficiaries' poor financial decisions, generation after generation. Currently, many U.S. states allow dynasty trusts to last indefinitely. South Dakota, Nevada, and Delaware are particularly favorable jurisdictions. Families who establish dynasty trusts are building literal 100-year wealth vehicles, structures that can compound and protect wealth long after any individual family member is gone. The critical role of a team of advisors. Let me be very clear, you should not attempt to build these structures yourself. The legal structures of generational wealth require a team of professionals working together, an estate planning attorney, a CPA with experience in wealth management, a financial advisor with generational planning expertise, and potentially a family wealth consultant. This team is not a luxury for the super rich. It is an essential investment for anyone serious about building and protecting multi-generational wealth. The cost of setting up these structures correctly is a fraction of the cost of not having them. Pillar 7. Life Insurance, the misunderstood wealth transfer tool. Why the wealthy use life insurance differently. Most people think of life insurance as a safety net, something that pays out if you die unexpectedly to protect your family from financial ruin. And that is absolutely one of its functions. But wealthy families use certain types of life insurance in a completely different way, as a wealth building, wealth transfer, and tax minimization tool. The key is understanding the difference between term life insurance and permanent life insurance, specifically whole life and indexed universal life, or IUL. Term life insurance is simple. You pay premiums for a set period, and if you die during that term, your beneficiaries receive the death benefit. It is pure protection, no cash value, no investment component, very low cost. For most people in their wealth-building years, term life insurance is the right foundation, pure, affordable protection. Permanent life insurance, specifically whole life and IUL, is a different animal entirely. These policies have two components: the death benefit and a cash value component that grows over time. This cash value is tax-deferred. It grows without triggering annual tax liability. Accessible. You can borrow against it tax-free during your lifetime. Protected from creditors. In many states, life insurance cash value is protected from lawsuits and bankruptcy proceedings. A guaranteed death benefit, unlike a brokerage account that could theoretically go to zero, a properly structured whole life policy guarantees a death benefit regardless of market conditions. The infinite banking concept. One strategy used by wealthy families is called the infinite banking concept, IBC, developed by financial author Nelson Nash. The basic idea: you overfund a specially designed whole life insurance policy, building up significant cash value quickly. You then borrow against that cash value, not withdraw, to fund investments, business opportunities, or purchases. Because it's a loan, not a withdrawal, it's not taxable. And while you pay yourself back with interest, the full cash value in the policy continues to grow as if the loan never happened. You essentially become your own bank, recapturing the interest you would otherwise pay to financial institutions. This strategy has passionate advocates and vocal critics, and it is not right for everyone. It is complex, requires significant premium commitment, and needs the guidance of an expert who specializes in this area. But understanding it exists, and that wealthy families use it, is part of becoming financially educated. Life insurance as an estate equalization tool. Here's a less discussed but very practical use of life insurance in generational wealth planning. Imagine you have 3 children. You own a family business worth $3 million, and you want to leave it to the child who works in the business. But you also want to be fair to your other 2 children. If you simply leave the business to one child, the others receive nothing. Or you have to divide a business that shouldn't be divided. Life insurance can be the equalizer. A $2 million life insurance policy, split between the other 2 children, allows you to leave the business intact to one heir, while ensuring all 3 children are treated equitably. This is estate planning at a high level, and it requires exactly the kind of intentional professional planning that separates families who sustain wealth from those who watch it evaporate in family conflict. Teaching your children about money. Raising wealthy thinkers. The most important inheritance you can give. We've covered the financial mechanics of generational wealth. Now let's talk about the human side, because without this, everything else fails. The single most valuable thing you can pass down to your children is not money. It's not property. It's not a business. It is a wealthy mindset, a healthy, empowered, educated relationship with money that will serve them for their entire lives, and that they, in turn, will pass down to their children. Here's a framework for building that mindset at different life stages. Ages 4 to 7, the fundamentals of earning and saving. At this age, children can understand that money comes from work, that you can save money, and that you can use money to buy things you want. Use physical money, not cards or apps, but actual coins and bills, so the concept is tangible. The 3-jar system, spending, saving, giving, is incredibly effective at this age. Small commissions, not allowances. A commission ties money to effort for age-appropriate tasks. Teach the foundational link between work and reward. Ages 8 to 12. Understanding value and basic investing. At this stage, children can understand that saving money allows you to buy bigger things. Introduce the concept of interest. What if your money could make more money while you sleep? Consider opening a custodial savings account or a custodial brokerage account. Let them pick one stock or index fund with a small amount of money. When they see their account balance change with the market, they're experiencing financial education in the most visceral way possible. Ages 13 to 17. Real financial literacy teenagers can handle real complexity. This is the age to introduce budgeting, credit, the cost of debt, how compound interest works against you when you're in debt, and the basics of income taxes. If they have earned income from a job, open a Roth IRA for them, even with a small contribution. A $5,000 Roth IRA opened for a 16-year-old will be worth over $500,000 by the time they retire, assuming historical market returns. That is not theoretical. That is math. Ages 18 plus full financial partnership. By the time your children are adults, they should be full partners in the family's financial story. Include them in conversations about the family's investments, properties, and business interests. Introduce them to your professional advisors. Make sure they understand the legal structures that protect the family's wealth and the responsibilities those structures carry. The goal is not dependent heirs, it's capable stewards. The family mission statement. One of the most powerful and most underutilized tools in generational wealth building is the family mission statement. Just like a company has a mission statement that defines its purpose and values, a family can have one too. Something like, the family name family builds and protects wealth through integrity, education, and hard work, so that every generation has more opportunity than the last. That shared sense of purpose is what keeps families unified across generations. It's what transforms wealth from a collection of assets into a living legacy. Let's talk about what actually kills it. We've spent a lot of time talking about how to build generational wealth. Now I want to spend some time on the other side of the equation, the mistakes that destroy it, because knowing what to avoid is just as important as knowing what to do. Mistake number 1. No estate plan. This is the most common and most devastating mistake. Every year, families lose enormous amounts of wealth simply because a parent died without a will or trust in place. When you die intestate, without a will, the government decides how your assets are distributed, according to a formula that may have nothing to do with your wishes. Probate can take years, cost tens of thousands of dollars, and tear families apart in the process. Having a basic estate plan, a will, a revocable living trust, beneficiary designations on all accounts, is one of the most important financial acts you can take. and yet surveys consistently show that more than 50% of American adults have no estate plan. This is a crisis that destroys generational wealth quietly, year after year. Mistake number 2, lifestyle inflation. That outpaces wealth. Growth. As income grows, spending tends to grow with it, often faster. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it is the silent killer of wealth building. A family that earns $200,000 per year and spends $195,000 is building no wealth, regardless of their income. The percentage of income that you save and invest is the single most important variable in your wealth-building equation. The wealthy are not wealthy because they earn more. Many of them are wealthy because they keep a higher percentage of what they earn. Live below your means. Always. At every income level. Mistake number 3, talking about money as taboo. In many families, particularly immigrant families and working-class families, money is not discussed openly. It's considered private, uncomfortable, or even shameful. This silence is catastrophic for generational wealth. Children who are never taught about money grow into adults who don't understand it. When those adults inherit wealth, they have no framework for managing it. Breaking the silence, making money a normal, comfortable topic in your household, is one of the most important cultural shifts a family can make. Mistake number 4, treating the family business as the retirement plan. Many business owners make the mistake of pouring everything into their business and planning to sell it when I retire. The problem, most small businesses cannot be sold for anything close to what the owner thinks they're worth. A business that is entirely dependent on the owner, where the clients know the owner personally, where the operations would collapse if the owner stepped away, has very limited transferable value. Build a business that runs without you. Document your systems. Build your management team. And regardless of your business's value, invest separately. Your business is one asset. Don't let it be your only asset. Mistake number 5, failing to diversify concentration risk. Having too much of your wealth in any single asset, stock, or industry is one of the most dangerous risks in wealth management. We've seen it destroy fortunes over and over. Families with all their wealth in one real estate market that collapses. Employees with most of their retirement savings in their company's stock, who lose everything when that company fails. Entrepreneurs who plow every dollar back into their business and then watch it go under. True diversification across asset classes, geographies, industries, and currencies is the fundamental risk management strategy of generational wealth. Mistake number 6, not preparing heirs. We've already touched on this, but it deserves its own spot on this list because it is so common and so destructive. Leaving wealth to unprepared heirs is not generosity, it's a liability. Studies show that sudden inheritance can actually damage the psychological and financial well-being of heirs who were not raised with the tools to manage it responsibly. Prepare your children, involve them, educate them, give them graduated responsibility. The goal is not to shield them from the reality of wealth and then hand it to them at 25. The goal is to raise people who are genuinely ready for the responsibility. Mistake number 7, ignoring the impact of divorce on wealth. Divorce is one of the leading destroyers of generational wealth, particularly in families without proper legal protections. A single divorce can split assets, dissolve businesses, and create financial chaos that takes decades to recover from. Prenuptial agreements are not unromantic. They are responsible, legal tools for protecting family wealth. Trusts properly structured, can also protect assets from divorce proceedings. These are not pleasant topics, but they are necessary ones. Mistake number 8, short-term thinking. The most dangerous mindset in generational wealth building is the belief that every decision has to pay off now. Real generational wealth is built on decisions that may not pay off for 10, 20, or 30 years. The family that buys a piece of land in a developing neighborhood when it's cheap and holds it for 25 years, that family builds wealth. The family that refuses to invest in an education trust for their grandchild because that won't help us today, that family stays stuck. Generational wealth requires the ability to think across time horizons that extend beyond a single lifetime. Plant trees whose shade you may never sit under. That is the fundamental mindset of a wealth builder. Your 10-year generational wealth blueprint. Here's your plan. Everything we've covered today exists on a spectrum of complexity. You don't have to do all of it at once, but you do need to start. Here is a realistic, actionable 10-year blueprint that anyone can begin today, regardless of income level. Year 1 to 2, foundation building. Get your basic estate plan in place, a will, a healthcare directive, and a durable power of attorney at minimum. If you have significant assets, add a revocable living trust. Update all beneficiary designations on your life insurance policies, retirement accounts, and bank accounts. This single step can override even the most carefully written will, and most people haven't done it. Open a Roth IRA if you don't have one. Contribute whatever you can. Even $50 a month matters because of compounding. Start having honest, open conversations about money with your partner and your children. Break the taboo. Create a family culture where money is a normal topic. Set up an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. You cannot build wealth without financial stability as your base. Year 3 to 4. Building your first asset. Work toward purchasing your first income-generating real estate asset, even if it starts with house hacking. The goal is to have at least one asset that generates income independent of your salary. Start investing consistently in low-cost index funds, ideally automating a fixed monthly contribution so it happens without requiring willpower. Form an LLC if you have a side business or rental property. Protect your assets from liability. Increase your financial education. Read the classics, The Millionaire Next Door, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Psychology of Money, Die with Zero. Listen to quality finance podcasts, and if possible, engage a qualified financial advisor. Year 5 to 7, scaling and diversifying. Expand your real estate portfolio using the equity from your first property to fund your second or third. If you have a business, begin systemizing it, documenting processes, building management, removing yourself from daily operations. Engage an estate planning attorney and CPA to review your full financial picture and begin building the more sophisticated structures, trusts, tax optimization strategies, charitable vehicles. Open custodial investment accounts or Roth IRAs for your children. Start building their financial future alongside your own. Review and increase your life insurance coverage to match your growing assets and obligations. Year 8 to 10, institutionalizing the legacy. Begin creating your family wealth document, a written record of your financial philosophy, investment approach, family values, and instructions for future generations. This does not have to be a legal document. It can be a letter, a video recording, or a simple document you update annually. Establish formal family meetings to discuss finances, investments, and goals collectively. Consult with an advisor about dynasty trust options if your wealth has grown significantly. Begin actively mentoring and preparing the next generation, not just by telling them, but by giving them real responsibility, real access, and real ownership stakes in the family's financial life. By year 10, if you have followed even a portion of this blueprint, if you own real estate that generates income, if you have a growing investment portfolio, if your family is financially educated, and if your estate plan is in place, you have done something that the vast majority of families never do. You have built a real foundation for generational wealth. The truth, plainly stated. Here is the truth about generational wealth. The one thing I want you to take away from everything we've covered today. Building generational wealth is not about being lucky. It's not about being born rich. It is not about earning a six-figure salary. It is about making a decision, a clear, deliberate, non-negotiable decision that your family story is going to be different, that the cycle stops with you, that the next generation will start from a higher platform than you did. And then backing that decision up with knowledge, action, and patience compounded over time. You have the knowledge now. The information in this video represents concepts that most people, even most wealthy people, never fully understand or articulate. You now know about the 5 forms of generational capital. You know why 90% of family wealth disappears by the 3rd generation. You know about the 7 pillars: education, real estate, business ownership, stock market investing, tax strategy, legal structures, and life insurance. You know the 8 mistakes that destroy wealth and how to avoid them. And you have a 10-year blueprint to start. The only thing missing is your decision to act. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Start your estate plan. Open that investment account. Have that conversation with your children. Call that financial advisor. Make the decision that changes your family's trajectory, not just for your lifetime, but for the lifetimes of people you will never meet, who will one day look back and be grateful that you made that decision today. That is generational wealth. That is legacy. And it starts right here, right now, with you. If this video gave you value, and I genuinely hope it did, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this content. Subscribe if you want to go deeper on wealth building, personal finance, and financial freedom. And drop a comment below. What was the biggest insight from today's video? What are you committing to doing in the next 30 days to start building your legacy? I'll see you in the next one.